Hi everyone, this is Cheryl Ayad. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am here today to talk about a series of steps to work out the 2 against 3 problems that we encounter in piano music sometimes, specifically the first arabesque by Debussy and Grieg's Notturno. But I'm going to work my way into this in a little bit more of a structured way. I did talk about 2 against 3 practice in my video on practicing Beethoven's Opus 14 number 2 first movement, but that was really approaching the 2 against 3 problem in more of a gestural way. And there was a little bit of scaffolding, but it wasn't really about dealing with that kind of the rhythm itself and how it pulls against each other. Many of you are probably familiar with strategies like chanting not difficult, for example, which will work out in terms of alignment and mathematics, but is not a very musical interpretation of 2 against 3. What we usually want with 2 against 3 is to maintain that sense of line and that fluidity, and the not difficult kind of interferes with that. So we're going to talk about some ways to work into a more comfortable musical approach to playing 2 against 3. So interestingly, the first step towards this is not working on 2 against 3 specifically, but moving from duples to triples and back to duples again. So for example, if you have a student and they're working on 2 against 3 music, they probably know most of their scales, but you can take a simple scale, whatever scale they're most comfortable with, and we start by practicing 2 octaves of eighth notes, 3 octaves of triplets, and then 4 octaves of sixteenths. We do not stop in between. And what happens is, if to do this effectively, as you're coming down towards the bottom of the eighth notes, you have to start audiating the triplets. So in some way you are actually dealing with 2 against 3. So it looks a little bit like this. Do a beat of triplets and then a beat of eighths, so it would be. Although I don't think that's as helpful necessarily. The other thing that's helpful about this strategy is if we really kind of magnify that sense of the drop. So the quarters, it's like a Taubman kind of technique. And then on the eighths, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, triplets. Because the common denominator in the 2 against 3 is the note that's on the pulse. And so if we can build that into a drop gesture, that can often help. So that's a first stage. And I often I have students do this anyway to help them work up the tempo of their pieces. But it's really handy if I know they're coming up on a piece that's going to require 2 against 3 playing. The next thing we can do is some movement and chanting. So I actually want you to stand up and do this with me. So when I indicate, that's for you to chant back. So we start by moving in duple. Move that up just a little bit. So the side to side is our big beat. So this is do. And then if we're in duple, so a simple duple meter pattern, do, day, do, day. Do, day, ta, do, day. And we would do a few of those just to reinforce the do, day. And then we start chanting in triplet. So do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do. Chant. Do, da, dee, do, day. Do, da, dee, do. Do, day, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do. And now we can reverse it. So we're in triple, and we chant in duple. Do, day, do, day, do, da dee do day do da dee do, etc. You can make up however many patterns that you'd like. I've found this to be very effective with students. Just to the movement kind of stores that one part of the pulse physically. By chanting, we're not having to worry about finger execution or what notes or whatever. We're just dealing with that feeling one division and chanting the other. So that's a really great second step. Another thing we can do is playing simple patterns in a duple in one hand, triple in the other, and they coincide. And again, we call into that dropping gesture. So I play, the first pattern is the eighths in the right hand. And notice I'm going to really drop. And then triplets. And I recognize that dropping isn't terribly musical right now, but we're just trying to get that physical sense. So I do two of each, then I do one of each. With a metronome, that's a really great way to keep your tempo steady. Let me put it together. If they have trouble, you can just do this. And then we can reverse it. So then we want the triplets in the right hand and the duples in the left. Helps us just divide the beat in terms of the gesture is the common denominator, and so that helps solve that coordination problem. What we don't want to do is just kind of guess without something governing that we're paying attention to and controlling. So that is a really great practice strategy for the first step to playing 2 against 3. The next thing I like to do is what I call scaffolding practice. So this is from about measure 4 of the first arabesque, but I'm actually going to start in measure 6. You can see where I wrote measure 6 there in purple. And so to scaffold this, we play the eighth notes in one hand, so that since the eighth notes are in the left hand, we'll play the eighth notes in the left hand, but we're only going to play the notes that are on the beats in the right hand. So it sounds a little bit like this, starting in measure 6. Since I didn't practice ahead of time, I'm going to go a little bit slower. And now I'll play the triplets in the right hand and just what's on the beat in the left hand. So that would be these. These are going to be my left hand notes. So this. So again, I'm only worrying about what they have in common at this point. And then when we put it all back together, so these, we can even do this, only what's on the beat in each hand. And I'm trying to use my intended fingerings. what they have in common, and then working out the kind of at war divisions, if we want to look at it that way. The example from Notturno by Grieg is even trickier because of the ties. So again, we're going to start with the scaffolding practice, and there are a couple different ways you can do this. This is, I've cut off the top line, so this starts with measure 3, but I am actually going to start in measure 5, which is the end of that first line. And the first thing I will probably do is I'm going to play, I would play the downbeat in the left hand and the right hand as written. So we have this. Other bass notes. So I instead of doing downbeat only, I would say bass notes only. So that gives me that foundational coordination. Then I'm going to ignore the ties for a moment, and I'm going to play whatever chord is being played or tied in the left hand, but only those that are on the beats. So I would have this, starting again in measure 5. Dealing with the pulses now. Now I'm going to play everything that's written, but I'm going to play the tied note because I want to reinforce for myself those moments of coincidence. So it would sound like this. Sorry, I tied it. Chuggy and all of that, but it gives us a chance to have those moments that coincide and help us make sure that we're not stretching it so far off that we're no longer 2 against 3, we're like 3 against 11 or something. Then when we put those ties back in, actually I did skip one step I did with my student, which was at 5, 6, 7, 8, measure 9. She at first didn't have to play the triplet eighth notes in the right hand, so it was more like this. And then when she could do that comfortably, we put those right hand chords back in with the left hand triplets. So now when we put the ties in, we still have that memory of that physical connection on the beat. So this. Is somewhat preserved. So I'm not saying that this would solve all of the 2 against 3 difficulties right from the very first practice session, but I did actually just work on a student of mine with this, and she had never played 2 against 3 before, and we did each of those steps, and I think at the end of the first week she pretty much had her 2 against 3s quite comfortably and musically. It wasn't just this kind of not difficult kind of mathematical interpretation. So I thought it was very effective. I hope it works for you. Please leave notes for me in the comments, and please subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much. Bye.